Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Oil and Gas Rundown here at King Operating. I'm Rachel Griffith, a Senior Vice President here, and we are very happy to have you joining us again this week. Of course, we're here every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central Time, giving you some understanding about the oil and gas industry. So today we have with us Aaron Lanyard, our land man, and we have our Executive of Tax, Rex Gifford, here with us today. We're missing Jay Young today. He's got some things going on in his world, so he couldn't join us. Of course, we miss him, but we've got a great show for you today and hope that we can kind of give you a better understanding about the oil and gas world, some practical information, and then some great stuff coming up on taxes as tax season is going to be approaching. And of course, you don't want to wait till the end of the year to think about tax planning and tax strategies. So let's start today. Aaron, say hi to everybody out there, our land man here at King.
Hey, how's it going?
We are very thankful you're with us, Aaron. So we want to talk a little bit, of course, on the show, we've brought up Landman, several times, and very popular streaming show on Paramount. Gives everybody a very interesting look into the oil and gas industry. Of course, some of that information is not fully accurate and a little dramatized, shall we say, but it draws a lot of interest and a lot of curiosity and questions around, what does that landman position actually look like? So, Aaron, let's talk a little bit about, when you sit down with a landowner for the first time, you're going in, you're making an introduction. What does that conversation look like?
Well, lots of times it really depends on which region you're in. There have been times when, you're actually maybe driving out to a ranch or a farm, or either, you're driving into the closest town to talk to them, or they might even want to meet at the local cafe. It's been a lot of different places that I've met landowners. I would have to say what you're trying to establish right off from the very start is some trust, because people are very sensitive to when you're talking about their land. A lot of people have acquired land through different means, whether they might have inherited it through family, so they have a deep passion, that's been passed down from generations, stories about this land. And so they have a kind of a different ownership perspective than, let's say, someone who's just acquired the property and is maybe operating it more as a business and just getting into it. But, really establishing trust, to me, from the get-go is very important, because they're leery at first. Anybody coming to them wanting to, build a road on their land and drill on it. And one thing I would also say is it's very important in today's world, where we've been producing oil in Texas since, early 1900s. These landowners are savvy, and they lots of times they aren't even the ones that actually. So you'll have a landowner, just because they're the landowner doesn't mean they're the mineral owner. And because we've been producing oil for so long, those minerals have maybe been severed many times. So you have a different conversation with a landowner who owns a large percentage of the minerals, compared to a landowner who is really just talking to you about the surface and where you're going to put the rig and the surface damages. But I'd have to say the number one thing you're trying to establish right off the bat is the trust, because they're about to, potentially give you the right to come onto their land and drill a well. And it's a big endeavor, and it's what you want to do is create that partnership. To me, it's very the trust issue that's just the initial meeting, and you're hoping to foster this relationship over the course of the life of a well. So that's the number one thing I'm thinking, is trying to talk to them and tell them a little bit about my history. And lots of times I'll even tell them a little bit about the family that I come from, and a ranching family that has been in the oil business since the 30s and 40s. And as I tell them about it, that allows them to gain a little more trust that I know what they're talking about or what they're wanting. And really, it is having that, being a surface owner myself, I know what people want and expect. And so I kind of go into that conversation already knowing a little bit about what they're going to want. And that's pretty important.
Yeah, that's actually very important to have some firsthand experience on the other side, not just being the one approaching, but the one who has experience being a surface owner. So, I mean, Aaron, what do you take with you? I was just thinking about that. I mean, do you take a box of chocolates? Do you take, some documentation, or, when you go out there, what do you take with you on that initial meeting?
I think everybody kind of has their own, for me, I just take the essentials, whether it's a contract or a map, information on the deal that, I'm wanting to propose to them. I'm not the type that, and I know some laymen do this, who are giving any gifts up front or, for me, it's a human to human interaction, and I want them to trust me. And so for me, it's the tools, and that tools usually is the correct information. A map to me is really important, right? Having a really good quality map that you can throw down and show them exactly where you're wanting to drill, or really where you're wanting to build a road or put a pad. So I would say, other than that, I'm not carrying much. It's just myself and my tools. Yeah.
Yourself and your tools. All right, no chocolates on the first date, huh?
Not yet. No.
All right. I like that. I like that. Hold out on them, Aaron. No, that's great. So what would some landowners be most worried about when they think they're going to be approached? What might they be worried about? Or are some actually happy to see you? Are they excited they're being approached?
Yeah. The majority of time, most landowners are really welcoming to oil and gas money because, hey, we're in the business to make money, and they need to make money to keep the farm and the ranch going. It's not always easy holding land just by either running cattle or some sort of ag operation. So usually I go into the conversation knowing that they want to make a deal, and but of course it's not always the case. We deal with plenty of landowners that have plenty of money. And so what they're really thinking about is, are we going to be stewards of the land like they are? How they want to hear about our systems and our processes. And also, who's going to be in charge? Who are they going to be dealing with? Who's going to be their contact person? That's a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the contact person, and that's why you said building that upfront initial trust and a relationship is really, we've talked about this before, is key for landowners or surface owners. And you think about that in any line of work or relationships. You want to know you can trust somebody and you can call somebody if there's an issue, and that there's a chain of command, and that things are really stable and put in place. I can imagine that would be a high priority for anybody who's allowing people to come out on their land and be there. I mean, for a long, however long it takes to get those wells drilled and fracked and then checked on and maintained. So it's a commitment for sure for them. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. So what is some advice that you would give landowners so they feel comfortable and protected, before signing an upfront contract or initial contract?
What I do is I like to give them a little insight into the team that we have, like at King, and that we're not just, by the time that we approach them, we've already done the geology work. Our reservoir engineers have looked at, we're coming to them because we think they have a really good prospect on their property that we're wanting to incorporate, into our program. We're wanting to build a nice leasehold asset with multiple sections, and we'll just make them let them know that, we're a professional outfit. Because I got to tell you, being in the oil business as a landman for the last 20 years, and being around my family, who's my whole life I've been around it, there's a lot of what you hear called fly-by-night operators. And those are people that, are just looking for a quick deal. But what we're doing is we're here to drill a well and incorporate it into our program, so that, that's something that we can take these assets and contribute to our partnership, and letting them know that we have a plan in place. I think it's a kind of a level of professionalism, and giving them that, and that goes back to that trust is, that gives them the confidence that they can trust us to come onto our land. And so I do share with individuals a little, I like to tell them a little bit about us. They want to hear a story, or the story about King. And so, we're in the business of building relationships and making money through drilling wells, and lots of people, they want to be a part of that, because they are becoming, like, even though within our company we have a lot of partnerships, We have investors, we have companies that we drill with, but also these landowners, they're going to become a partner with King. So I really try to go out of my way to, do everything I can to give them that confidence. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, no, I love that because it is. I mean, and they are our partners. They're a very important part of, what we do, and maintaining that relationship is critical. So let's take a look and kind of look at, MidCon. I know you've been up in the Anadarko Basin, looking at some different acreage there.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that area, are you looking at, those are owned by individuals or groups of people, or, what does the acreage up there kind of look like?
Yeah, most of these are ranchers and farmers, a lot of farmers. There are some large ranches that have been put together, but up there everything's divided into sections, and so it doesn't mean that you'll have you might have one section, and what I notice is the section next to it might be a whole other set of owners. Section 640 acres. So 640 acres is plenty of acreage for some people, but then there are also some ranchers that you get to raise cattle and actually make money. You bet you're going to have to put together some significant acreage, and so that might be 4 or 5 sections. But I feel like these are real down to earth, hardworking ranching and farming families, and I personally really like working with individuals like that. I can relate to them. Just like I mentioned earlier, that's what my family's been involved in cattle ranching since 1902. And so that's something I can really connect with. Or I personally, now I work as, an in-house landman, and I'm here in this office in Addison. But I would say that I'm really at my best when I'm out there on the ground talking to these ranchers and farmers, because I can relate to them, and they're like the people that I grew up around, so.
Yeah, those are, as we would say, those are your people.
That's right. That's right.
Those are your people. I love that. So, I mean, this just kind of brings up an interesting thought as we're talking about, contracts and leases and things like that. And how many of, these family or people are actual ranchers, or they're, they have cattle out there, whether it's, probably beef cattle or some longhorns, or how does that play into contracts? If, I mean, the structuring of ranching.
Well, here, I'll tell you the most, and this is something I learned from my grandfather. There's one rule, and it's the most important rule for anybody stepping foot on the property, is if you open a gate, you better close it, because oil and gas companies are notorious for opening the gate to drive the big cattle, or drive the rig and everything through, and while they're doing that, or by the time they close the gate, the cows are on the county road and there might be 5 miles down the way. But it's actually a really big problem, and that's something that they want to ensure that their livestock is okay, and that goes back to the trust. You tell them that the people that we hire are aware of that, and they understand that before they step foot on the property. And lots of I can even say, like on this project that Bill's been working on the Bivens project. I think we even incorporated some ranch rules that were handed out to every contractor that's stepping foot on the property. You got to ensure that, especially the people that own livestock, that the livestock are going to be safe, and any of their facilities aren't going to be, lots of times there might be a special provision written in a contract that they got to stay a certain amount of feet from a barn or certain facilities. That can all be part of the negotiation.
Well, Aaron, I actually just, you couldn't see me, but I laughed when you said the thing about the gate, because I understand that so well. My husband, he grew up in Wise County on a ranch over there, and his dad was a cutting horse trainer, but they ran a lot of cattle. They leased out a lot of the land to, people with cattle. Yep. And he has stories, of being a kid, and you do not leave a gate open. No. You open a gate, you shut a gate, and he has stories of a few times when he was little, leaving a gate open and those cows got out, and oh my goodness, the trouble he was in. And so when our kids were young, they still had that ranch, and always, you open a gate, you shut a gate. You open a gate, you shut a gate. It was just like drilled into our kids. So that's very relatable for me. And yeah, those animals, that livestock is livelihood. It's precious to them. I mean, it could be different reasons. You know, I know for Longhorn owners, there's a lot of sentimental value to some of those Longhorns they have. And yeah, it's really important. So thank you for sharing that, Aaron. You gave me a good chuckle about the gate situation. But yeah, so we are excited about MidCon. I think that's one of our next locations up there, and we're looking at how much acreage do you think right now, Aaron, that we're looking at?
We're looking at a lot of acreage. We're reviewing. We're actually starting to lease. You know, there's just just one little area. When I say little, it's one area we're focusing on that we kind of have an area of interest that's, you know, close to 8,000 to 10,000 acres. And when you're going into a county like this where there's been a lot of production, it can be difficult to put together everything contiguous, but that's what we're trying to do so that we can drill multiple wells. We can HBP some acreage because that's really important. We might be drilling one well, but we want to make sure that one well is holding enough acreage to drill 2 or 3 more wells. And so, you know, the goal's big. What will we end up exactly? I'm not sure, but you know, we are reviewing thousands and thousands of acres. And what really has helped us drill down is, and I mentioned it earlier, is by the time before it gets to me, it's the geology has been done. Mark and Phil, we have excellent geologists here at King that have done the geology, then they pass it on to our reservoir engineer. And then only once it's passed their test, they'll hand off to me and like, Aaron, how does this acreage picture look? And I start looking at the map and trying to figure out a way to put it together. And we'll do that by a combination of leasing, and we'll make some deals with some other oil and gas companies that they have acreage that's HBP held by production. And so, I mean, I figure that within the next year or two, we'll release thousands and thousands of acres, but also be partnering with several different, you know, quality oil and gas companies that are already in that area. And we're already talking to them. I just can't give you away any of our secrets.
I know. I gave you a little spot question there to, you know, tease a little bit, but I think you nailed it when you said fly-by-night operators, and that's not us. We're not looking for a little piece to drill a few wells on. We're not, you know, looking for checkerboard. We specifically build oil and gas assets to sell for our investors, and we want repeatability. We want to be able to have, you know, running room. And so I know when you guys are doing your job over there, you're evaluating large pieces of acreage put together for these projects, which is honestly amazing. You guys are a tremendous team over there. So well done, you guys. And of course, as we're talking about drilling, we brought Rex in because we want everybody to start thinking about tax season and the benefit of partnering with an operator like King, right? You get that direct partnership opportunity in these areas that we're talking about. We've talked about Bivens Ranch before. We're talking about MidCon. So really the opportunity to invest in oil and gas, receive incredible tax deductions. I will say, I believe they are the best tax deductions that any high net worth individual accredited investor can participate in. Along with our revenue, we're seeing double-digit, you know, distributions to our partners. So we're very happy about that. So Rex, let's talk about the big beautiful bill first. Let's look at what are we looking at in 2026 with the big beautiful bill coming into, you know, oil and gas investments. How has that affected, you know, what you do and what we do here at King Operating?
Well, first of all, let's build on what Aaron has suggested, and that is acquiring oil and gas lease assets. And so that is the one expenditure as far as developing a targeted oil field that you don't get a current deduction for. Leasehold assets are depletable and recoverable over time. So now let's switch to where we mitigate a lot of tax liability by the creation of deductions that do give you an immediate deduction. And of course, those are primarily intangible drilling costs. And what the big beautiful bill did is it did not change how those are handled or deducted. And so what is intangible drilling costs, commonly referred to as IDCs? They're anything that you can't touch or put your hands on. They're quote unquote intangible and required to drill a well. So again, the big beautiful bill did not change any of the provisions pertaining to intangible drilling costs, which are currently deductible under section 263C of the Internal Revenue Code. The other option is you can elect to amortize IDCs over a 5-year period, depending upon when the intangible drilling costs are incurred. So, for instance, if you become a partner in one of King Operating's sponsored partnerships in, for instance, in September, let's say that you became a partner in September of 2025, and you elected, rather than claiming the IDCs as a current deduction in 2025, you elected for one reason or another to amortize it over 60 months. So in that instance, you basically would take 4/60ths of whatever the IDCs were that were incurred by the partnership for the calendar year of 2025. And then in subsequent periods, you take 12 months for the next 4 years, and then the final year you claim the remaining 8 months. So what the big beautiful bill did is it set as a permanent deduction the ability to deduct 100% of tangible costs. Again, when you develop a well or drill a well, in most cases, your IDCs are going to run somewhere between 70 to 90% of the cost of drilling, testing, completing, and stimulating that well. The other, somewhere between 10 to possibly 20%, is going to be tangible costs. Well, the big beautiful bill basically changed the prior law that said that for tangible costs, you could deduct 50%, and then as a current deduction, and then you had to depreciate the balance. Well, actually, in 2024, it was 60%, and then you had to capitalize the remaining 40%. Fortunately, now, beginning January 19th of 2025, when Mr. Trump came into office and signed the big beautiful bill on July 4th, basically any tangible costs incurred after that date and placed in the service becomes 100% deductible. So now there is parity between the intangible drilling costs and also the tangible costs. So that should be very, very beneficial in, as you talk about a certain percentage of first year or investment year deductions expressed as a percentage of the amount invested, or in our case, a capital contribution to a partnership. For instance, if someone contributes $100,000 to the partnership and is an accredited investor and accepted as a partner, what we're projecting for 2025, because of the big beautiful bill, is somewhere between 75% to 85% deduction based on that capital contribution. So what that amounts to is somewhere between $75,000 to $85,000 worth of deduction. So the significant portion of that is IDC, but the approximately somewhere between 10 to 15%, because again, you can expense 100% of the tangibles, is basically bonus depreciation, which is the manner in which you claim expensing 100% of the tangible costs. And again, that is section 168K of the Internal Revenue Code. And that section was made permanent by the big, beautiful bill, which means that there's no sunset provisions that won't expire. The two other major components that were set that impacts oil and gas is the qualifying business income deduction, which once you get beyond the first year, then ideally, if your projections and the development of your targeted oil wells meet the projections that you're trying to achieve, obviously you're going to create a significant profit-making model and the development and selling of oil and gas hydrocarbons. And that is going to generate taxable income in subsequent periods. Well, with the qualified business income, what you're allowed to do is, again, once you have a partnership that is generating positive taxable income, the partners can claim an additional up to 20% of the qualified business income as an additional deduction. So not only is oil and gas a portion of the funds that you're receiving is sheltered by either the greater of percentage or cost depletion, which again is the expensing of the leasehold assets that Aaron has been talking about. And again, the leasehold assets is the right to drill. Also, again, once you have a profitable partnership, then the QBI or qualified business income deduction will allow you to further reduce and mitigate the taxes that you'll be paying on that income. Now, you have to carry forward some of the investment year negative QBI, so it doesn't all come into effect in the second year, but the second and third year, being able to claim an additional 20% deduction for the QBI income can be exceedingly beneficial over the long term. The other component that for individuals that have non-business income, such as W-2 income, pension income, portfolio income that includes interest and dividends and both short-term and long-term capital gains, they did set up a section called the excess business losses, or EBL, which is section 461L, that unfortunately limits the amount of deductions you can claim in any particular year that are business deductions that you're trying to offset non-business income. And for 2026, for instance, for single filers, the limitation is $256,000, and for married filing joint, it's $512,000. Regretfully, in 2025, those amounts were higher. For 2025, it was $313,000 for single filers and $626,000 for married filing joint. So the IRS is curtailing some of the ability to mitigate your tax liability. So I encourage you to look at successful operators that have a strong business model, such as King, where we include all of the leasehold rights as assets of the partnership. And by doing that, once we have a divestiture event, and what we're divesting of is, of course, the entire oil and gas field. If you look at how oil and gas is valued, it's based on what the Society of Petroleum Engineers issue in their engineering reports. And the simplest way to look at that is they constantly refer to it as the 3 Ps, which is proven, producing, probable, and possible. So if you participate in the business model of a sponsored oil and gas offering by King, all of those three Ps are included as assets of the partnership, where other sponsors, they only give you the first P, and that's once you have a divestiture, that's all the value you would get. So basically, the 3 things to remember as far as how the big beautiful bill impacted oil and gas for 2026 is they made tangible costs 100% deductible. They set as permanent the qualified business income deduction, which again is the 20% deduction over and above once you have a profitable oil and gas partnership. And then they limit some of the deductions in the investment year by against non-business income by the excess business loss deduction or the EBO.
Rex, amazing. Rex is one of our best assets here at King Operating. As you can tell, the man is brilliant. And if you have questions, if you're listening to this thinking, okay, I got part of that, but I have more questions about how oil and gas can really impact my tax strategy, please reach out to us because Rex is available. He can answer questions. We can talk to you. We can, give you more information on our fund. So you can always email me at rgriffith@kingoperating.com. You can go to our website, King Operating, and fill out a form there. And we would love to get in contact with you, let you know how our opportunity can impact your overall tax strategy and portfolio. As I said, we are, have monthly distributions going out this month, double digits, along with that gorgeous tax benefit that Rex was sharing. So definitely get in contact with us. Make sure you check out our founder, Jay Young, our founder and CEO. His book, The Upside of Oil and Gas Investing, will get you a great in-depth look at who we are here at King and exactly why our model is different and how it can benefit you as an investor. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Rex, for being on with me today.
Thank you for attending.
And everybody, thank you so much. Make sure that you join us again next Wednesday, 2 p.m. on the live. We would love to see you here. Have a good one, everybody.